Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, folks, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities Paranormal Guys podcast radio show. I am one of your 2 hosts, Garrett Jagman. In this evening's show, we have the Oddworld Listeners Encounters portion, where once or twice a month we take on phone calls from all over the world for listeners to share their extraordinary stories of the bizarre, supernatural, and the paranormal. I just want to thank everyone who did call in this evening for a great show. We have topics ranging from demonic spirits and hauntings to cryptid and UFO sightings, and I think you guys will love what we put together for you tonight. Hit the like button, share button, or follow button on whatever online platform you are listening to us on. The more that you do that, the more it moves us up the ranking in the podcast community, and the bigger and better things we can do with the show, as well as the more reach we get and more fans that come across the show. So we would really appreciate it. We do air you our show through all online platforms from iTunes and iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Google Play, everywhere in between. If you want to talk to us live during our live episodes, or you want to share comments or your thoughts on the episodes, you can do so by going through Spreaker.com or through the Spreaker app on the app market, and doing so through that specific application. That is Spreaker. We do want to thank our sponsors, Cryptid TV, and you can check them out on YouTube or Facebook. They are a huge community in the underground paranormal side of things that allow everyone to come in and share different topics and discussions, articles, things that they've taken as far as pictures or evidence, EVPs, and everyone just discuss it in a forum platform and a nice fun way to just meet new people, network, and have a place to go. If you're a paranormal nut like me, you'll absolutely love it. So once again, that is Cryptid TV. Check them out on YouTube or on Facebook, and we want to thank them for being our sponsors. We are going to go ahead and jump into our first call of the evening, and I'm very excited to share with you this caller's story. Here we go. All right, guys, we have our first caller on the line this evening. I'm going to let him tell you who he is, where he's from, and his experience. Welcome to the show.
Hey, this is Charlie down in Mississippi. I've seen a few things. When I lived up in Tennessee by the Pickwick Lake, I seen 7 lights come down and kind of just hang there in the sky for a little bit. 2 of them went off to the left, and they came back. One of them came down above tree level from our vantage point and flicked on a light that was just insanely bright. I mean, it lit up the bottom of the clouds and everything. And it kicked off, and they all kind of went off in their own directions, and they came back again, and then off they went. And there's this time when we was coming back from Tennessee or Texas. I was coming through the turn that goes into Memphis up in Little Rock, and down out of the sky it showed up with one of them big white cigars, and it just kind of hung there for about 7 seconds, and then it shot off to the right. That was the first time I ever seen one of them. That was pretty cool.
Now, question for you. With the 2 different experiences that you just mentioned, the second one coming back from Texas, you said it was more of the cigar-shaped aircraft, which I've certainly heard a lot of accounts of over the time that I've been doing this. Now, the other time that you mentioned over the lake, were they a different type of ship, or were they similar in shape and size?
Oh, that's just real bright lights.
Okay, so you really couldn't make out the spacecraft itself. You really just seen, which I've heard of a lot of too, is just really individual balls of bright light. Whereas the second time, you actually seen a craft of some sort.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we was about 3 miles from the lake when we was seeing all that. Probably about 2 in the morning. It's pretty wild.
That was actually going to be my next question, is what time it was. So, okay, so it was about 2 a.m. and you seen them, and you said there was, what, roughly 7 of them, you said?
Yeah, they come in kind of like a little formation. The first 4 did, and the other 3 came in from the left and joined them. They all just kind of sit there until that one come down above the tree levels and stuff and kicked on that light and lit up the clouds and everything.
Very interesting. Now, that whenever they, after they came in formation, the other 3 followed, and then you said they kind of just floated around above the lake. They went off a little bit and then returned, and then they ultimately all went off in their own direction. Correct? They didn't leave in formation. Is that correct?
Yeah, they all took off in their own direction after that. Some of them went straight up, and some of them just disappeared into the night.
Now, something I've seen in a lot of encounters of the brightly lit colored balls, because I've seen time and time again people's encounters of that, or heard people's encounters. They came in together as a formation, as you said, but once they kind of were going off in their own direction, there wasn't really any normal flight pattern to them, correct? It wasn't like they were going in straight lines. They were just kind of floating around in the air as if they have no, limitations as far as flying.
Oh, yeah. They just kind of just zigzagged around and stuff like that for a bit. Probably maybe about 20 minutes altogether, sit there and watch them do that.
Okay, I was just about to ask how long. Okay, so about 20 minutes. Now, you said it was you and there was others with you, correct?
Yeah, it was my ex-wife at the time.
Okay, very interesting. Have you ever since then seen any additional of the bright lights?
I've seen all kinds of lights since about the 70s.
Okay.
I didn't know what I was looking at until I went and seen that Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Then I started paying attention to what's going on.
And that's the thing, is most people don't see it because then again, most people aren't looking for it. And that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize. Oh, I've never seen an alien. I've never seen a UFO. Well, here's the thing. How often do you go out and stare at the sky? Now, some may say I do it all the time and have never seen anything. Okay, well, that just means you've never seen anything. But there's a lot of people who will kind of, try to depict your stories and say, oh, well, I've never seen anything. I don't know if I believe that. Well, how often have you specifically gone out and looked at the sky? Well, there you go. If you're not looking at the sky often, you're not going to see it. So I'm guessing with what you said, you've spent quite a deal of time, stargazing.
Oh, yeah. I always look up anymore. You just never know,
It's a vast universe out there, and I've certainly seen some things in the sky myself. Never anything clear and concise as the light balls like you mentioned, or the spacecraft the cigar shaped. But I have seen things where it appeared to be stars in the sky. I'm staring at them, and then all of a sudden, boom, gone. Where I watched them fly, almost like a shooting star, but only a short distance, and then just vanish. There was no flames behind it, no burning like a regular asteroid or a shooting star. Where it literally was like they were in one spot. Next thing you know, they were in another spot in the sky, and then another spot, and then just vanished. And you have to wonder. There's certainly a lot out there that we don't understand.
Oh, you got that right.
Now, with the cigar-shaped object that you've seen, you said that was coming back from Texas. What time of the day was that?
Probably about 2 in the afternoon.
Okay, so one was very early in the morning, and one was obviously midday. So, okay, and how long did you see that object for before it disappeared?
Probably about 7 or 8 seconds, because I started reaching down, grabbed my phone, and just then it just shot off. It's like, oh, damn it,
Now, were you in a populated area, or were you more on back roads on like a trip?
Oh, we was coming back from Texas. We was getting ready to take the curve that goes into Memphis. So there's a lot of people out that day. It only lasts like 7 or 8 seconds.
So they would have had to really been seeing it at that exact moment, or they could have easily missed it.
Yeah, because you're looking down the road, keeping an eye on everybody around you, and well, there it is. It's like, what the hell is that? And the time you start reaching down, it just zipped off to the right. And it's like, wow.
Very interesting. It's something I would love to see, that proof. I've seen, like I said, things that certainly have opened my eyes a bit. I've always wanted to see an encounter like that, and most of us never will. So certainly you're fortunate to have gotten to see that, because to me, I think that's one of the most fascinating things you can experience, is to see something in real time in front of you, clear-cut evidence that there is something far beyond what we even realize.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, how long ago was the last experience you said you had?
Probably a couple of years ago. The last one I had was a silver disc out in front of the shop here in Corinth, Mississippi.
Okay.
I thought it was just a balloon, I was thinking some kid in the backyard somewhere in Corinth had let go of his balloon, and I was kind of laughing to myself, this little kid screaming in the backyard pointing up at the sky, and I was sitting there kind of watching it. It was a windy day, and it was just sitting there kind of wobbling. And it kind of just took off real slow, and then zip, it was gone. But I seen the definition of the top and the sides, and you can tell it was one of them discs.
That's interesting, because I've always wondered, is the different sightings of different styles and shapes of aircrafts different races of alien beings, or are they used for different things, such as one more of military style reconnaissance and another one's more of exploration? I always kind of wondered, is it something that the ships individually have their own purposes, or are they completely different visitors of some sort? And that's always something to be mindful of, as well, as maybe they're all the same thing for different purposes, or maybe you have now been fortunate enough to see 3 completely different races of beings.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, that's for sure.
Well, certainly. Is there anything else that you have experienced that, obviously I think all 3 of those are pretty profound. Is there anything else that you've seen that you can remember as clear cut as those 3?
It was probably about back in the 80s. I was working up in Vincennes, Indiana, and there was one of them was a little silver. You couldn't tell if it was a disc or not. It kind of looked like a light, but it was silver. It was during the daytime, about 3 o'clock. It was popping into a cloud, popping out of a cloud. Pop into the cloud, pop out of the cloud. It was like, well, that's not one of ours.
Yeah, you can tell. As soon as you see the flight pattern, you can tell, okay, that's not anything we've ever seen or heard of before. So it's either some very advanced things that the government's not telling us, or that's certainly not us whatsoever. So very, very interesting. I think, it's funny to know, too, a lot of times people have seen UFO sightings. A lot of times, if you notice, those people will see them again. For some reason, you are more apt to see it, and maybe that's because you're paying attention more, but also I think that they let themselves be seen to certain people as well.
Yeah.
So very interesting. Well, no, I thank you for allowing us to put you on the show and sharing your experiences with our listeners. I think that people are going to love to hear what you had to say, and I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Hey, no problem, Garrett, no problem.
Well, listen, you have a wonderful rest of your night, and we'll be talking to you again sometime soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care. All right, guys, we have another caller on the line. I'm going to let him introduce himself, tell you where he's from, and a couple of his experiences. Welcome to the show. You still with us out there?
Yeah.
Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, who you are, and what you've experienced.
All right. I'm Joey, and I'm from Des Moines, Iowa, and I've experienced something pretty radical over a town, a cemetery by Mount Air, Iowa. And this cemetery is called Tedrow. You can look it up on, I think it's Ghost Haunted Sites on Google. Is how I found this. And one night, me and my buddy, we were wanting to go ghost adventuring. And so we got a hold of another guy that we knew who said that he's really susceptible to this kind of stuff. So we thought we'd bring in somebody that might have more of a chance of something happening that night. And we were going down there. We read a whole description about this place. You can find that out, like I said, just look up Tedrow Cemetery in Iowa. You can read the whole description. For me, it kind of sounded like an urban legend. So I was just going down there to pretty much debunk the thing and say, hey, nothing happened. Old man's wise tale or whatever. And so we're down there. My buddy's got all this equipment with him for EMF. And so we got video cameras and recorders and a whole bunch of other stuff. And we get down there. And 3 minutes and 15 seconds when we're down there, before we knew it was 3 minutes and 15 seconds, I parked my car about 1 to 200 feet away from the cemetery. It was out in the middle of nowhere, and a little small cemetery. It looked like a patch in the woods. So all of these tombs were dating all the way back to the 1800s. And so I parked the car actually further ahead of the cemetery, make it more suspenseful. And so there's the gate, and I have one of the buddies on the left of the gate, a buddy at the middle, and I'm standing at the right of the gate looking. That's where I'm staying about 3 minutes and 15 seconds. And how I know this, because the audio, this is when stuff started going down on the audio. And in front of me, just looking into the dark of the woods, I was just, just standing there, not thinking anything of it. I didn't have a flashlight on me or anything, but all of a sudden, like, I started hearing this stomping noise. It was just real loud stomping, and I couldn't tell if it was getting closer or what, but I noticed that it was getting larger with the stomping, and just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I felt like it was going to charge at me. This loud was like profound. Like, I can't explain the type of noise that I heard. It's like one of those things you got to been there to experience it. So I take off running because I got scared, and right as I took off running, the noise stopped. Didn't hear it run off or anything like that. And as I'm running up to the car, I remind you, I got 2 other buddies with me, and I'm running up to the car. As I'm watching what's in front of me, my buddies in the back of me were like, "Whoa, man, hey, there's someone in your car." And I already saw this. My dome light was on, and it looked like something or someone was in my car looking for something. And I thought there might have been a cop there, because supposedly it's like supposed to be like private property, just on the cemetery side, not like on the trail side. So that's the first thing I think of. And I get up there, and like, there's no one there. The car door is open, and and I was like, "Hey guys, did you hear that noise?" And they're like, "Yeah, And I was like, "What did you hear?" And one of them was like, "It sounded like a car on a gravel road coming to a stop." The other guy said it sounded like something tumbling down a hill. And to me, it sounded like an elephant charging at me.
Interesting.
So what was crazy to me is we all heard it, but we all heard it differently.
And that's like common. That's common for people to all experience something together as a group, but everyone to individually experience something a little bit different. That is a common occurrence, which is always very interesting to think of, that you're all obviously experiencing something out of the normal, but it's interesting how it comes across to different people as different things. Right.
And what was crazy, too, is like, but what we saw in my car, we all saw the exact same thing.
Okay, so it came together as one thing then. So the audio of it all was a little bit different to each of you, but certainly the visual was the same.
Right, and what's weird about the audio is how it took off at 3 minutes and 15 seconds right when we got there. So it happened quick.
Yeah, that is peculiar. Usually it takes a while before you're going to notice something, if you even notice something. So for it to happen so quickly, that's very interesting.
Right. And when we replayed the audio, when he came over to my house, he was like, he already told me that he didn't hear anything in the audio. Absolutely no noise. But it picked up all the crickets, it picked up all the coyotes, it picked up us talking. And by the time we heard this and got to my phone, or got to the car, I actually called my buddy to tell him to come there. And when I was talking to him, it sounded like there was a community of people in the woods. And at one point, it sounded like there was a slab of metal being slammed against a tree.
Interesting. So there's definitely some disembodied voices and sounds going on around you in this location. Now, you said it's pretty secluded. It's not like in a rural town area. It's more backwoods, sectioned off.
On a level B road. You got to go all the way down this level B road to get to this cemetery. So you go all the way straight, and you'll take a right, and you'll go up and around into where it comes into a forest. Then you'll go down, and there's like this little roundabout, little cul-de-sac, down and about, and right onto the right of this cul-de-sac, there's a cemetery.
Okay. Interesting. It's always I've certainly gone out and explored a lot of different cemeteries and graveyards, including as well as private homes and other facilities and buildings and things. And I've noticed a lot of times, sounds kind of cliche, but going to graveyards and things that are often not near town or not near a populated area, that are sectioned off and secluded in the woods somewhere, kind of separate. I've noticed more of a higher level of activity there than you do normally in somewhere that's openly populated.
Right. And plus it didn't help that there was also rituals that were going on, like animal sacrifices and some kind of witchcraft type stuff, maybe devil worshipping. I don't know per se, but I know there had been cults that got into this woods and practiced their rituals.
Okay, and you know that from the research that you've done on the location prior to going there, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
Very interesting, because that is something certainly associated with a lot of very openly active areas in the paranormal side, is when there is things like cults doing rituals, sacrifices, satanic rituals and things like that it does open up for the area to be a lot more susceptible to not just ghosts, but demons and malicious spirits and all kinds of things. So that is very interesting. There's a place in Pennsylvania that I've went and explored, which is out in the woods, which is a graveyard, which had a lot of things very similar happen there. And it is just a massive hot spot for visuals, disembodied voices on audio recordings. Possession has happened there that I've actually firsthand witnessed, which I talked about on one of our other shows.
This is in Louisiana?
No, this one I'm speaking of is in Pennsylvania, so it's
Pennsylvania.
It's
okay.
very interesting. Yeah, I've actually got to see possession happen in front of my own eyes at this place. There's been numerous reports of things happen there that are very vivid and descriptive, and I've gotten to witness a few myself personally. Nothing I would ever wish anybody to witness, but I know when you start dabbling in the dark arts and things like that in a location, a lot of those things seem to attach themselves and linger long after that specific ritual itself is done.
Right, and my buddy who went with me, I won't say his name, but when he came back home, something had followed him and started messing with his shelves and his doors and stuff, and then late at night, he said that he was actually getting molested by this entity.
Okay, no, that certainly can happen, because you have to be careful whether you are a paranormal investigator, whether you're someone doing this as a hobby for fun. Whenever you start to dabble in the paranormal and get involved in this, a lot of people find it to be fun and it's fascinating, and it is. But you have to be careful with it, because unfortunately, this is a very sensitive thing, and it can certainly attach itself, follow you home, cause mood changes. You might not even realize that something followed you home, because it's not doing anything visually, it's not doing anything that you can hear, but all of a sudden you notice that you might normally be a very happy and bubbly personality, but all of a sudden everything's dark and dull, and you start to feel depressed. There's a gentleman who recently reached out to me who would like me to come and possibly explore and investigate his home that he recently moved into, because since they've moved into the new home, he has become very, very depressed, and he doesn't understand why, and he's never been that way. He just finds everything to be dark, and just nothing has any joy for him anymore. He's heard and seen things numerous times, and there's a very malicious entity in this building, and he was reaching out to me for guidance and advice, because I have quite a bit of experience in this field. I've been a paranormal investigator for roughly 15 years. True. And I let him know that could very well be that the entity that's inhabiting this place that he's living is most likely causing this change in feeling, that there's some reason that it's drawing energy from him and causing him to feel sad, depressed, or dark about things. So that very well can happen. And as you said, the molestation part of it, where they can mess with you in your sleep, they cause very vivid bad dreams and do things to you, are very common as well. So hopefully, now, is that something that he is still experiencing, or is that something that after a while has gone away for him?
He did some stuff to get rid of it.
Okay. I was going to say, there are ways you can go about trying to get rid of them. No, it doesn't always work. I know that sage smudging is a big thing, to burn sage. Go ahead.
Yeah, he did some research so that way he could get rid of it. It seemed to, he seemed to get rid of it. That's what he said.
Good. Yeah, I know.
He didn't tell me about what was going on until like a year and a half after it happened because he was embarrassed.
That's common as well. A lot of people don't want to speak about it, especially if something's specifically tormenting them, and depending upon the levels of torment or what it is that they're doing, most people are embarrassed to speak about it or don't want to speak about it because either embarrassment or the fear that people will think they're crazy. Even though you did experience things with him and he knows that, still that can distance you from that person and you be a little bit hesitant on telling them. So I'm glad that he was able to get rid of it because sometimes, unfortunately, they don't want to leave. So even doing things like sage smudging and other practices to get rid of them sometimes does not work, and they are there to stay. So I'm glad that his seems like it must have left. Now, after you seen the car that night, seen the door open, seen the light on, you all witnessed and heard the same things.
The crazy thing about the door is like we thought maybe one of us left the door open.
Okay.
I mean, it was on the passenger side, front door, but at the same time, we thought, okay, maybe someone did leave it open by chance. But then I heard an audio on YouTube about these kids that were in the same cemetery, and like on the second audio, they were talking about all of a sudden it was just like, hey man, did you leave your door open? Then I knew it wasn't a coincidence.
Okay, so yeah, there's commonality between different people's experiences, and it's not unheard of for them to mess with vehicles in places like this. The place that I had mentioned earlier, I've explored a lot of places, but this specific one where I said I witnessed the possession, and it was a graveyard kind of secluded. So very similar to your story there is we didn't have them opening the door, but we had heard about handprints on cars, and we had tried it a few times with no results. We'd went there many times, but one of the times specifically, we did dump flour on the hood of the car. And we were always, for people out there saying, why would you do that to your car? We always washed it off afterwards. There was actually, ironically enough, about 4 miles down the road from this place, even though it was secluded in the woods, there was a car wash that we'd always stop in afterwards late at night and wash it. But we dumped flour up on the hood of the car, and over again we did it with no results. So we started to think that, okay, maybe people have experienced it, maybe it's more of their imagination. Well, one of the times specifically we had walked around the graveyard for quite a little while, came back to the car, and there was only us there. You would know if anybody else came because it was a one-way in, one-way out, and you would hear them coming from a long way away. No one was there with us, but yet when we returned back to the car, the three of us, there were several handprints in the flour on the hood of the car, all children's handprints, all very small, childlike handprints, much, much smaller than ours. So it was very, very interesting on that account that, we had heard about it, we had read about this happening. We tried it probably a dozen times with no results, and then finally we did experience it. We tried it a few times afterwards and didn't get anything either. So it was that one time out of all the times we did, but they do sometimes like to mess with your vehicles when you are at their home, their location. So it's, I think it's easier for them to mess with something like your car or your belongings that are sitting there than it is for them to interact with a person specifically as far as touching you. So a lot of times they go to what's the easier thing to move and touch. And it's a way of showing you that they're there. It's a way, I think, of showing you fear too, to say, hey, like, you're in our home now. So very interesting. Now, after you noticed the door was open, did you guys get in at that point and leave, or did you stay longer?
We stayed for a minute, and one of the guys was actually wanting to stay there and do more investigation. But after hearing the noise that I heard, it scared the crap out of me, so I didn't want to stay there longer than I needed to be.
No, that's completely understandable. I mean, sometimes it's fun to continue to investigate, but sometimes you got to know when to get out.
Well, I feel like it was definitely asserting me.
Okay.
Because I felt the heavy of its presence, and I just, wanted to get out.
No, you have to know. You have to know your own limitations. If you feel like something's wrong, it's time to go. No one's going to know that better than yourself.
And what's crazy is I went out there again with my girlfriend not too long ago, and so I started taking pictures and stuff. She thought she felt the presence of a woman in the middle of the graveyard, which there would have been these two tall tombs. They would have been the tallest ones, and I guess there was a woman actually there. She was feeling this presence of a woman.
No, I lost you a little bit there. You said there was 2 tall gravestones, and I heard about the presence of the woman, but there was one part that I lost you on that I cut out a little bit.
Yeah, she felt this presence of a woman, and later on we did a little bit more research, and there's actually a woman buried there on these big tombs. One of the stand out.
Okay, so there's a woman buried towards one of the big tombstones. Okay, you're still cutting in a little bit in and out, but I was able to make up enough that I can let the listeners know what you were saying. That's okay.
But I was taking pictures just to try to see if I was going to, getting anything. And at this point where I'm taking all these pictures, I'm seeing a whole bunch of shadows around me. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe I was just matrixing, like shadows, because of dusk. It was probably like at 9 o'clock. So it was just, from sunset, into the darkness. So I thought maybe my eyes were just playing tricks on me.
Okay.
But this one shadow that I did see, it came from the left of my eyesight and blackened my whole left peripheral. And I saw it move to the ground, and it's up by the gate of the cemetery.
Okay, so you actually seen this specific shadow moving, kind of not in the fashion of a shadow. It was moving almost freelance, where it was able to kind of just move on its own.
Right, and it freaked me out, right?
I would imagine.
So I took, a couple more pictures. This is about when she was like, this and that and whatever. And she was saying about the woman, and so I was taking a couple more pictures, and then on my last picture, nothing happened, and I was just so we must have been there for about a half hour this time. That's why I'm guessing 25 minutes to a half hour, and I heard something behind us, and I asked her, I was like, hey, did you hear that noise? And she goes, yeah. And I was like, I already knew what I heard, but I heard someone walking behind us, but I wanted to make sure if she heard what I heard. So I was like, did you hear what was behind us? And she said, yeah, it sounds like someone's walking behind us. And it continued. And I ran to my car. I was not going to experience another loud noise again.
Yeah, I mean, it's best, like I said, you just got to know when it's time to go, when it's time to stay. It's nice to get out sometimes.
I don't know. At the same time, I feel like a wimp because, like I'm hearing these noises and I don't got, I can't stick around. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Well, and the thing is spirits can cause an normal fear in you, where normally you can be a person who's not scared of anything and you have no fears of the paranormal, but for some reason you can see ghosts and be fine, and then other times you can be in another place and encounter a spirit where you are utterly in shock and fear and you don't understand why, because you've seen and heard things like that before and were never scared, but for some reason this time you are, and that's the presence that the spirit itself can give off. So sometimes they can make you feel that way.
And I hate to talk about her experience because her experience wasn't mine. But she said something while she was jumping into the car, something attached itself to her.
Okay.
And and attached themselves to her for about a day and a half.
Okay. Yeah, it's very common. Like I said, I always warn people. I know a lot of people that want to go out and do this as a fun thing, like I said, and that's okay. It's okay to want to go out and experience and see things beyond the normal, normal realm of life, and want to know if there's things out there. That's okay, but you need to also go into it knowing that this is not a game. It's fun, but it's serious at the same time.
Right.
I don't even look at it so much as fun anymore, which I still love what I do. I always look at it from the mind of, this is research. This is a very, very serious thing, and it can go very, very wrong very quickly. So I always warn people out there, especially anyone listening tonight, if you are doing anything of this nature, please go about it with a sensible mind and a cool, calm mind, but go about it with a very serious tone behind that, and know that you are dabbling in things that are very, very real.
Right, and that's why I want to make a job out of this.
Yeah,
I'd be able to do
it's very interesting. No, it is. It's very. I've been educating people on it for quite a while, and that's why the new radio show's up, to be able to help a lot of people. And like I said, I have emails pouring in. The gentleman I recently talked to is setting something up, I believe, for me to come out and research his home to see if I might be able to help try to ward off this spirit that's been tormenting and terrorizing his family. And if anybody else out there is hearing this, has questions or concerns, wants me to possibly get involved in investigating their home or their building, their factory, anything like that, I do those type of investigations. You can hit me up for my rates and see what it is that it takes to get me out there. So I would love to certainly help anybody out there that's hearing this and has any type of problems.
And for me, like, I'm not more scared, like, when I'm in the closed doors, like, in a house or a building. Like, when I'm, like, out in the middle of nowhere and it's just, like, me and someone else, like, I just get tripped out.
No, it's understandable. You're in the middle of nowhere, so if something does happen, there's no one around to be able to help you. You don't have the stability and comfort of walls around you. You are wide out in the open, and if you run, where are you going to run to? There's nowhere to go. So it is very understandable.
And one other thing was, I just went to a cemetery over the weekend, actually, about 2.5 hours from Des Moines, and what happened was we went to this really huge cemetery where they actually it was an Indian burial ground. I can't remember what the town was called, but when we went in there, we both got really sick to our stomachs and we felt very throw-up-ish, and that was just driving around the cemetery.
Okay, and that's common as well, as to get the sick feeling where you get nauseous and for some reason you go from feeling fine to not feeling fine at all, and then a lot of times if you leave the area, you all of a sudden you start to feel normal again.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. Is it went away almost simultaneously, and when we were in there, the gut feeling for us both almost happened at the exact same time. And then all of a sudden, she started feeling nauseous as much as I was starting to feel nauseous, and it was just really bizarre that we were experiencing the same thing.
No, that is, and that's what they call that is clear-cut evidence, because it's one thing if you experience things and the person with you doesn't, and you can say, well, am I just imagining this? Is this real? Or, maybe I'm just the one experiencing it and no one else isn't. What's going on? But when you have people experiencing it at the exact same time, the exact same things, you know for a fact that at that point that there's something going on beyond what you're experiencing.
And what was awesome about it, too, is, I wasn't even expecting anything. I was just driving around because I knew, like, they weren't really supposed to be in there after past, at sunset. So I was just going to do a little tour, and that was it. I wasn't thinking about, I'm going to think about getting, stomach sick. Like, it just started happening for the both of us.
No, very interesting. Like you said, that's once again clear-cut evidence for yourself, and I think that since you are fascinated with these topics and something that you're interested in, that certainly helps to know that you have experienced it, because I know people that are very, passionate about the paranormal and love it and research into it, but they've never themselves ever experienced anything, and then I know other people that have experienced a lot and are a little bit more sensitive, myself being one of them. But, it is definitely an interesting thing, and I think you've gotten some great encounters, and I really want to thank you, obviously, for coming on to the show tonight, letting us know your experiences and encounters, and we'll certainly get this out to the people and see what they have to think.
All right, awesome. That sounds great.
All right. Well, hey, Joey, it was nice having you on, and you have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, you do. Same. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
All right, folks, we got our next caller on the line, and why don't you tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about your encounter.
Hi, my name is Natasha. I am from Butler, Pennsylvania, and I had my one and only encounter in a graveyard back in about 2005.
Okay.
I had been going out one night after work with my now husband and some friends. We thought it would be fun to go there and just walk around in the dark. And I was separated from the group, and there was like a really long road going into the graveyard. It was like the bigger one of the roads, and so I was on that road, and I don't even know where everybody else went, but they had just gone off. And I was looking for them, and so I'm looking down like in the one direction towards like into the cemetery, and I thought I saw something on the ground, and I was like, like maybe like a small animal, like a dog or something. And I was like, oh, you're probably just seeing things, like it wasn't actually moving. So like I thought maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. And so I turned around to look for my husband and my friends back farther in. And when I turned back around, the small thing that was like on the ground was even more visible. Like it was clearer to me. And it actually looked like a small child, like really small, like smaller than a toddler, like maybe a 1-year-old on its hands and knees. And I was like, that is absolutely insane. Like I'm seeing things. So I started like squinting down there, and it just like, it was almost like moving like on the ground, but I again was kind of questioning what I was seeing. So I turned around to yell for my friends like to come and, you know, tell me that I was losing my mind. And when I turned back around, it was like one of those like horror movies where the character like moves really, really fast towards you. And that literally happened with whatever was on the ground there. Like 1 minute it was down at the other end of the road, and the next second it was all the way up right in front of me. And I looked down, and I swear to you that there was this little, I don't even know what to call it, like a baby, but it was just twisted, like demonic looking. I have no other words other than that for it.
Wow, that's pretty creepy.
Well, yeah, I was terrified. Not only that, I also like literally thought I was having like a mental breakdown. So I just turned and like ran straight back, like farther into the graveyard, into the woods.
I don't blame you.
Found yeah, I guess maybe it's not the smartest place to like run is deeper into the graveyard, but I just could not believe what I was seeing. So I found my group of friends, and of course they all like kind of laughed at me and were like, you know, you must smoke too much or you're losing your mind or whatever. So it was kind of like an inside joke. And then about a month later, my husband and I moved into an apartment, and the apartment had this like giant industrial like bathroom. It was one of the biggest rooms in the house, which is kind of weird. And the only things in it were like a bunch of mirrors and then this old like clawfoot tub and a toilet and a sink. And so like all of that stuff was in one corner, and then the other corner was like just kind of empty. So I was sitting on the toilet one night, like in the middle of the night, and I looked up, and in this little corner, this like dark corner of the bathroom, vertically from me, there is that same like image. And then I really thought I was losing my mind. Like I was like, this is not happening. Like I need to go to the doctor and get checked. And I shut my eyes and was like, you know, you're imagining this. And I opened it again, and it was still there, and it was clearer than before. And I just jumped up off the toilet, ran back into bed, pulled the covers over my head, and was like, this is not real. Like, you're dreaming this. Wow. And I went to sleep.
I would imagine you tried to stay the hell away from it, yeah.
Yeah, and he was just like, you know, you're absolutely, like, I don't know what you think you're seeing, but you're losing it. And it was kind of like a joke, and I never saw it again, like, after that. But what I felt like when I did see it, it was just really just a horrifying experience for me.
Now, you said that was back in 2000. Did you say 2005?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had been around for quite a while prior to this, seeing this this entity, and then a good bit since, and then never before or after had seen anything like those two specific circumstances.
Yeah, not at all. And what I saw like that night in the graveyard, and then again that night in my bathroom, it was absolutely the same exact thing. It wasn't like two different things. It was absolutely the same.
That's interesting, yeah, that you've seen it there, and then it almost followed you home. And the strange thing is that, you know, it didn't mess with you at all in that month between, and hasn't since. It was just kind of a two-time occurrence and then gone, which is obviously a thankful thing. As you said, you don't want to, you know, experience that more than you have to, because I'm sure that would be a bone-chilling experience. I've experienced a few demonic things myself, unfortunately, and never something to, you know, certainly play with, or never something you want to be around. Seeing an entity is one thing, but when you see those malicious type, it's a different type of feeling. And I think you just kind of described that it was just a bone-chilling, just it's hard to explain, but it's a horrible, horrible feeling.
Yeah, it was just like this wave of like ice cold, just fear. There's no other word. Just like, it wasn't like there was no questioning it, nothing. It just came out of nowhere, like this just terrifying, freezing cold feeling.
Now, what time of the day or night was these occurrences?
So when we were at the graveyard, I honestly could not say for sure. I would say probably sometime between, like, we worked a lot of overnight shifts, so it was probably sometime after midnight, or sometime like super early in the morning.
Okay, so it was still in between like the midnight to the early morning hours.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, for sure. And then at home, it was like 2:30 because I remember looking at the clock.
Okay, and that's a popular time. I mean, 3 o'clock being the witching hour, being the most, often time period that you see things, which I don't know if I necessarily believe in. I mean, I know that there's a lot reported around 3, so obviously I think that's accurate, but I feel that anywhere from 2 to 5 is usually your most active portal or active window to experience things, especially with investigations that I've done, that between those specific hours, 2 to 5, it seems like that's when things happen.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's really funny because, like, I have nightmares a lot, actually, ever since my car accident, and I always am waking up, like, between literally like 2 o'clock in the morning and like 4 o'clock in the morning. It's right in that time period.
Okay. There's a lot of strange things that go on at that time period. And I mean, it gets into some other subjects that my co-host and I, Daniel, have talked about or will talk about in future episodes with different things with sleep and cognitive dreaming and astral projection. And there's a lot of things that you can do in your sleep or that happen in certain hours of the night when you sleep, that the brain changes or perceives things differently. So there's a lot more involved than I think we're aware of, that I think for some reason at that time period we're more susceptible to see and experience things, or maybe the spirit world or whatever you want to call it is more susceptible to come through the doorway. But very interesting, and I'm glad that obviously you haven't experienced that anytime since. If anything, in the future ever does happen, please let us know. We would love to hear more about it. Let's hope that that is not the case, though. And you said that was pretty much your one, and I guess in this case double dipped one experience out there.
Yep, that's honestly it. And I like cemeteries. I have spent a lot of time in cemeteries. Like before that, it's one of my favorite places to meditate or write or just be peaceful. But I definitely am not going to one after midnight anytime soon.
Yeah, you got to be careful. There's certain things that change throughout the night, and I've been one myself to go to a lot of graveyards during the day and walk around and do ghost box sessions and just meditate, things like you have said, and I've always been one that picked up on the energies from different cemeteries and different graveyards and things, and I've certainly done my fair share at nighttime. But it takes a certain type of mind and wanting to be able to see those things, to be able to go there, because it is very active depending upon where you go.
Yeah, I think I'm good for now.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Natasha, we appreciate you coming on the show tonight and sharing your story with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Hopefully I don't have any more stories for you.
Hopefully not. Well, listen, you take care and have a great night.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Goodbye. All right, folks, we have our last caller for this evening. He's going to tell us a little bit about the different things that he's experienced. He did ask that we keep him anonymous, so we always do respect that. For anyone listening out there that does want to share their experiences, know that you always can do that. You do not have to give your name. You can email us at brutalbusinessent@gmail.com. Let us know that you want to be on the show, and we can always read off your experiences, have you on the show anonymously, or have you on and say who you are. So one of the three is absolutely fine with me, and why don't we go ahead and bring him on and hear what he has to tell us. Welcome to the show.
Hi, hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Well, I look forward to hearing what you have to share with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've experienced?
Well, I guess over my lifetime, I've experienced quite a few things over, being in my 50s now, 50, I should say. I've experienced quite a few things growing up with the paranormal experiences. I guess in the house I lived in Columbus, Ohio, I've seen and heard and I experienced a lot of things, I guess, from Ouija boards to apparitions to shadow figures. I mean, there's just so many things that happened in my lifetime in the house in Ohio. So I don't know what that, coincides with what I have to. My biggest thing is, I guess, the UFOs that I've seen. And I mean, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I've experienced two, experiences with UFOs. That's so I don't know. I don't think they all coincide together, but it was just kind of a weird thing, and I figured I'd call in and talk to you guys about it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you doing so. Now, a couple questions I have right off the bat. Now, obviously, the haunting of the home that you grew up in and spent some time in within Columbus is obviously interesting, and we'll jump into that in just a moment. But I wanted to ask, with the UFO sightings, was that also in that time frame and in that same area, or was that somewhere else?
It's totally somewhere else. One was in North Carolina, one was in Florida.
Okay. I just have a gentleman on the show, which actually will be airing the same episode as yours, from Mississippi, but he has seen several between Texas and Mississippi on his travels on the road, because he works on the road. And he had some very good things to say about some of his experiences, so I look forward to hearing some of yours as well. So why don't we first jump back into the haunting itself? When were you, whenever you first experienced your first sighting or first really prevalent experience with the supernatural?
Well, I guess back, I would say it started this is going way back to 78, maybe 80. Lived in a house in Columbus, Ohio. Found out that the previous owners had, and I'll just say it is a fictitious name. The name was Baker, and I guess one of the parents, I think it was the mother, had passed away in the house from cancer or some kind of disease, and it's always been, or it always was, a very cold house, very, it's hard to explain it, but there were a lot of things that happened in the house that I cannot explain. Things from glass shattering to the things I played with in a Ouija board back in the day with, manifestations of some kind of, I can't even say it was like an entity or a demon. It was, but it scared the hell out of me.
Okay.
So, it was friends of mine that had stayed when I was a kid. We all, friends stayed over. We always, they'll go over a friend's house and stay over and blah, blah, blah. They experienced things too. Shadow people, talking, whispering, not anything past that, no levitations or any kind of weird stuff like that. But, growing up in that house, there were a lot of strange things that had happened. I just can't explain it. I guess the shadow people were the biggest part.
I was going to ask you about that.
That's a big part of my life.
Okay, I was going to ask you because that's an interesting thing, because there's a lot of people that have seen, apparitions, have seen spirits, even demonic entities, and I fall under all of the above. But I have yet to ever see, what I would classify as shadow people, but I have had a lot of talks and had people on the show, and we even had an episode specifically based upon night terrors and sleep paralysis, and which is accompanied a lot of times, with the shadow people visitation. So always been a fascinating topic, something I've been very interested in. Do you feel that the shadow people, the apparitions that you've seen, the voices and everything within that home, do you feel that they were all connected to one another, or something greater than even that was at work and it was just a multi-channel location, so that the shadow people might have had nothing to do with the ghosts? They were separate, it's just because of the energy in that house? Or do you feel that they were all kind of connected in some way?
I don't think they were connected, because it had happened at two different locations. I guess when I was growing up, and when I try to explain these things to anybody, they just listen and they roll their eyes. I guess when I was maybe 5, 8 years old, somewhere in that adolescent, very young, I have experienced, and the only thing I can explain is they were called handstands to me.
Okay.
And handstands, to me, it was more like a bright shadow figure who had appeared. And I don't expect anybody to understand what I'm talking about, but it was just, it was a crazy time where things would appear, because I loved the horror films and things like that. I guess when I was like 8, 10, whatever, I always followed these. I loved horror movies. Maybe that had something to do with it. But I had seen a video about these things called night stalkers. I think they're out in California somewhere, maybe out in the Colorado mountains. They were long-legged, small-headed things that walked in the grass. And there's videos out there. I'm sure a lot of people have seen these, you know, the video that's out there. But I think I experienced the same thing when I was a kid.
Okay.
And it's always stuck with me. And I don't know how to explain it, but I always called it a handstand. A handstand where there was like multiple arms and multiple legs. That it's and like I said, it's no one can understand what I'm talking about, but it is one of those things, and it's always stuck with me. And I guess the shadow people stopped following, or I stopped seeing these things maybe 10 years ago. I've seen a lot of them over the years, but the shadow people are probably the scariest thing I've ever seen. But going back to the handstand, bright shadow, long leg thing, I can't explain it. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, that was one of my experiences.
Well, I think that, you know, when your mind takes in something that it doesn't know how to explain beyond the normal realm of explanation, you really can't describe it to anybody. You can give somewhat of an overview because, I mean, obviously you told us what you experienced, and I have a vision in my mind, but I'll never be anything close to, you know, what you truly experienced because there is no way of defining the vision of what you've seen. So very interesting. Now, was that handstand, was that creature inside the home or was that outside the home?
It was absolutely inside the room. I lived in the attic. Well, my parents put me in the attic. Like I said, I was 3, 5, or 6, whatever it was. And that's where I lived. That was my bed.
Okay.
So I saw things that probably just you just can't explain to a child. Looking back at it now is just, you know, it's like, wow, I see all these videos of things that come out. It's like I can relate to that. And it's just one of those experiences that you're never, ever going to be able to define or explain to anybody without them looking at you and saying, you're crazy.
Yeah, you will get some looks. I get some looks because of the investigations that I do and everything I talk about because I get pretty in-depth with a lot of these subjects and know quite a bit in this realm, and I know that I certainly get some double takes sometimes and people have their own feelings. But, you know, for the most part, everyone's pretty accepting that of the work that I do. Now, I've certainly gathered a lot of knowledge over the years, and one of which, as you mentioned, was the shadow people. You know, a question that I have, and everybody's experienced different things. 2 questions I have with that end would be, when you experienced the shadow people visitations, was it accompanied with any type of sleep paralysis or anything like that, or was it just more? No. It was not.
Absolutely not. No. I saw them as black, shadows. I mean, when they come into your area and they leave very quickly, and you can't explain how they're there. They may be up in a corner. They may be off to the side of a wall. It doesn't matter. But when you see them, you understand. And sometimes I'm really not afraid, but I see them. And like I said, I'm not a lunatic. And then people are going, "Oh, you're crazy." But it's like, no, I've accepted everything that I've seen. And the funny part is that my wife has experienced the same things, and we don't talk about it too much, but it's happened.
Now, has she experienced any of that prior to you, or has it only started once she was with you?
Prior to me. Definitely.
Okay, because I've seen both sides. I have seen people or heard people tell me accounts before where, you know, their partner also experienced things, so that's kind of something they had in common. Or I've heard cases where my partner has never experienced anything until they got with me and started seeing the same things that I would see, which was always interesting as well, as like you were the one bringing this around, which I've always felt I was a part of as well. I've always felt that I'm kind of a conduit of some sort because I have seen an extreme amount of activity over my life, and a big chunk of it has always been, you know, around groups of people that were there that maybe have never seen anything in their life until they were with me somewhere and something happened. Exactly. So it's very interesting to hear about that you guys both experienced separately. Because, I mean, this is something
we did,
rare.
And it was on separate occasions, Garrett. It was on separate occasions. She did it prior to us even meeting. So it was just one of those things that, I don't know if it even means anything, but it was just we had that experience and we related to it, and it's like wow, it's interesting. So
now was hers with shadow people as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's more popular than you'd think. I mean, and a lot of people, you don't hear about it often, but being in the realm that I am as far as looking and seeking out people who have had experiences, I have heard quite a bit of accounts of shadow people already. So it's over the years. So it's definitely been very interesting. It's more prevalent than one would think of. Now, question I have, and maybe you have and maybe you haven't, because you already had one big difference than most of them, is that you were not in sleep paralysis at the time. Now, the other question I had was, have you seen in those visitations or those, encounters, the man in the top hat or the old haggard woman by any chance?
No,
you have not.
Not at all.
Okay, because that's a very common seen thing in the shadow realm of people seeing shadow people, is those two entities where you can't see the facial features, but you do see the man in the very tall hat, black dark cape, or the old woman. You see her hair and you can see the outline of her face, but you can never see her. So I've had people that have and have not. I've had people share that experience amongst different people in different parts of the world, and then others say I've seen tons of them, but I've never seen either of those two. So I always wondered, how does that work?
And I always research these things too. The old man in the hat, I've seen and read a lot of these things, and it's nothing that I experienced.
Yeah,
nothing that the tall hat, even the whole BS Slender Man crap that came out. It's nothing like that. I mean, when I've seen these things, and I'm not saying I see them all the time. I don't. I've seen them probably in the past. I'm going to say 5 times over the years.
Still a pretty good bit
from a kid. So what?
I said still a pretty good bit over the years. I mean, 5 encounters with shadow people is definitely significant.
Yeah, and I don't know what it means. I guess I feel blessed a little bit, saying, okay, well, this happens to me for a reason. But when I'm sure my wife feels somewhat the same. I mean, our biggest thing that her and I really, really share is and I'm going to skip topics here, but we have both encountered UFOs, and I know this sounds weird, but we've. I hate to skip subjects on you, but there are some things that it's out there, and they're there, and I've got friends and family that work for the military, and they not really agreed with me, but not said no. So we just kind of look open-minded, I guess. I don't know.
It's a big world not to think that there's something out there besides just us. So nothing will ever sound weird to me. Trust me, in this realm, I hear it all, and I am a firm believer in a lot of things. So no, that's great, and I'm glad that you feel that way, that it's almost a blessing to a degree. A lot of people wouldn't feel that way. I personally feel that way myself, that I've experienced good, I've experienced bad, but I have learned to accept it. I've learned to channel it and take it in and be fine with the fact that I've been given this gift that I don't understand why, but I also embrace.
That's how I feel. That's how I feel, Garrett. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know why you got it, but it's like, obviously you were given it for some sort of reason, so instead of being afraid of it and hiding it, might as well at least accept it. You don't have to be as open as I am, obviously, but I mean, it's as long as you accept it to yourself, that's all that matters.
Exactly. I've also, you always heard of this term, the women's intuition, or knowing things that are going to happen before they happen. These experiences happen to me probably maybe 3-4 times a year, and I see things before they happen, and I know this sounds weird, but then I'll see them on TV the next day, and it's totally obscure, has nothing to do with anything that I'm doing at the present time, but I know when I see that it's exactly what I just can't explain anything. And like I said, I'm not a psycho. It's weird things that happen that, hey, is it women's intuition? Is it some premonition? Do I see things before they happen? I don't know, but it happens maybe 4 or 5 times a year, and I sound crazy, but it's just weird.
No, you're telling the world as you've seen it, and that's what we like our guests to do, certainly. And I mean, a question I have for you, and then we'll jump into a quick visitation, so to speak, of the alien side, and then we'll wrap up, is
okay.
with the intuition and things that you've had, was it something that you dreamed and then happened? Because that happens very, very often for me, where I will dream a scene vividly of people I've never seen before, conversations I've never had before, and places I've never been. And most people would say, okay, a week, a month later. For me, it's much deeper than that. There's times where it's 2 years later, and all of a sudden someone says something behind me, the light's hitting a certain way, I look at a building, and just then, boom, it hits me, and I'm like, oh my God, and I turn around, everything's exactly the same as the dream. So mine a lot of times happen anywhere from a year to 2 years out, and it's not common, but I would say I've had probably 35 experiences where I've dreamt exact scenes in conversations that have happened years later. So is it something similar to that, or is it more you just fully get a vision?
Mine doesn't happen like yours does. Mine happens reverse.
Okay.
So if I'll sit down and watch whatever on TV, or I'll talk to somebody nonchalantly in conversation, and I will know that I saw that on a television commercial or whatever. It's very hard to explain how to it's kind of like projecting. I project things sometimes, and like I said, it doesn't happen that often, but if I project things, it's because I knew it was going to happen.
Okay.
It's very hard to explain. So I mean, you and I can talk to the ends of the earth on this, but it's something that's never going to change. And I have accepted it. It doesn't happen that often, but, when it happens, it's like, okay. And I tell my wife, I was like, hey, you've had, deja vu. Well, this is times 10.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I mean, that's how I feel about mine to a different degree, different form than yours. But I mean, certainly, whenever those moments happen, and that you dreamt this 2 years ago about people you had never met at that time, and 2 years later, that's the exact face that you dreamt, 2 years prior. It hits you, and you're like, okay, there's some crazy stuff going on behind the scenes that my brain just fully can't take in right now. Because we only use 10% of our brain. So, I mean, you got to think, what's that other 90% doing, and what could that other 90% be doing?
Yeah, I mean, before I let you go, and I know you got your set for time, but I've had two, and I don't want to get off the shadow people or intuition or all that stuff, but I've had two experiences with UFOs. And they'll be real quick.
No, that's it. I was going to ask you anyway, so that's great.
Raleigh, North Carolina, and the second was in Fort Myers, Florida. Raleigh, North Carolina, I saw bouncing lights and chased by a helicopter.
Okay.
That's the one. That was the first one. The second one, most profound, was probably in Fort Myers, Florida. I would say 8 years ago. Driving down one of the main drags in Florida, and I just I saw a silver line. Now it looked like a silver bar, maybe, I guess, a bar that was off in the distance. Now, following this thing, driving down the road, I kept watching. I kept watching, going, "Wow, what is this thing?" Well, it got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller till it disappeared. Now, I called the local. There was like local airport where the small planes come in and go. Not the big planes, but the small planes. And I called them. I said, "Look, I just saw something, and I don't know. You need to tell me what you have on your radar." And nobody would help me. I said, "Look, I'm looking at something right now that is probably 100 feet wide, and it's going away from me." And when I say going away, I mean it's like it's going off in the distance. And it got to a point where it was just a small dot. Okay. And I tried to take pictures, and it was it was one of those things, spur of the moment, and I could not get it. But they said nothing, and they said, "No, we don't know what you're talking about," blah, blah, blah. But I know what I saw. And now my wife has seen kind of things too, where things show up in a distance and they disappear at night. I don't know. But no. I just wanted to share those experiences because I'd never said those out loud before.
No, I'm glad that you have. I actually got a question on them. The first time in North Carolina, when you seen them, the balls of light, did they? Yeah. Was there several of them? Did they come in a pack and they kind of went off on their own and came back together, or how did they form? How did they move around? If you could explain.
I was on New Hope Church Road in Raleigh, and I saw three. They were red, and they bounced like they were going like a zigzag up and down. Like, if you look at three balls bouncing up and down, zigzagging, that's what they did. Then I saw a helicopter behind them. I opened my window, back in the day, you didn't have power windows. So I opened my window, I'm listening, and I can hear a loud roar, like a helicopter went by, and I saw these lights, and it was like chasing these lights. So, I mean, do I know what it was? I don't know. But it was crazy.
No, was that at nighttime?
It was at night, absolutely. Like 9 or 10 at night.
And then the second time in Florida, was that during the day or was that at night?
It was, blue sky, nothing. That was the best one I ever saw. That was pretty crazy.
And was it a road that was populated, or was it more or less you kind of secluded by yourself?
Huge populated, Cleveland Avenue right down Fort Myers, Florida. I mean, you can't miss it. It was by Page Field. I mean, I called the tower and say, hey, do you guys see this? And they said, no, we don't see nothing. I'm like, I'm looking at it. And eventually it just kind of like drifts off and you don't see it anymore. But this thing was like a large, all I can say is like a silver line or a bar. And it was like hovering there and it just drifted off.
That's very
Mind
interesting.
You, this was like, it was pretty crazy. And I called my wife and I was freaked out. It was, it was exciting, but it was scary. It's like, what the hell? So anyway.
Well, I think you'll like the show whenever this airs on Tuesday. The reason being is my first caller on the show that I'll be airing is a gentleman who's seen several UFO sightings in Mississippi and in Texas. Okay. And his 2 encounters that he talked about are almost smack dab on with your 2 encounters. So I think you'll really get a kick. You wait till you hear what he says. It's almost like I just heard the same story twice from 2 completely different people that don't know each other.
Wow.
There's some differences,
awesome,
but
dude.
There's some differences, but you'll hear, and it's very, very, very eerie. Actually, it just kind of gave me the creeps. So, no, I love it. I'm glad that you came on and shared your experiences with us, and we can't wait to air this to the world and see what they have to think. But thank you again for coming on the show and sharing with us what you've encountered.
Thanks, Garrett. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, no problem. You have a great night.
You too, man.
Well, you heard it here, folks. 4 different people's encounters from different parts of the world, and all very fascinating and very in-depth. And we are very thankful that they called in tonight to share their experiences with us. If you like the show, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, please click the share button, like button, and follow button. Send us around, get us to your family members and friends. The bigger and more people we get checking out the show, the more things we can do with the show, the more we move up the podcast community ranks. We would really appreciate it. Make sure you're always checking out our past and future episodes on all online major retailers, as we said earlier, and stay tuned for our next episode of Celestial Oddities, Pair of Normal Guys podcast with me and Daniel James, where we talk about our next topic, which is reincarnation. So if reincarnation is something you are interested in, we will dive deep into that and spend about an hour to an hour and a half talking over different theories and different ideas within reincarnation. Our last episode was on Hollow Earth and Inner Earth civilizations. So if you missed that, you can check that out as well. We have a backlog of all of our shows here on Celestial Oddities at just a click of a button. We appreciate you listening tonight, and we will catch you next time. You have a wonderful night.